So in the last video, we created a simple API where you can get all the items in a database and you can also post items into the database. So as you can see in Postman, we have all our items and we can also post more items. So now that we have this, we're going to go on to part 2. So before, everything was targeted just generally towards all items. So today we're going to narrow it down where you can select each item by its ID. So for example, in the GET request, you'd only get one item instead of the whole list of items. So the 3 methods that we're going to add today are the GET singular item, edit an item, which is called put, and deleting items. So let's get right into it. We're going to begin by making a class. So class, I'll just name it item because this is plural, so I'll just make it singular. And we'll start off with our GET request. So get self. Now, so obviously we can't just use this to select an item. We need its ID, and so we can make something for that. So by adding a resource, so I'll target /item, and then I'll make int called selector. And so using the selector, so in the URL that we send the request to, so this part of it will be the ID that we're targeting. So self and selector. And so now that we have this, we can say item equals item model dot query dot. So above, when we were getting the items, we did dot all to get all the items. But this time we're going to filter it. So we're going to do dot filter, and we're filtering it by the ID. So we'll do filter by ID equals selector. And then we'll get the first result. So now that we have this, we're going to run a quick check to see if the item exists in the database. If it doesn't, we're going to send a 404 error. And if it does, we're going to give them the item. So if item, this basically just checks whether it exists or not. So if item, then we'll return item.json. And then over here, we'll just do return error 404, no item with that ID exists. Okay. So basically, if the item exists, it'll return the item, which will automatically terminate the function. But if it doesn't, so it's going to go onto this line of code, which is going to send the error to us. So now let's test this out. So let's run our server and go to Postman. Now I have a request already set up. So over here it's just /item. Singular, and then the ID of an item. So let's say 3. Now, item with ID of 3 should return notebook by the seller of Matt. So let's test this out. Now, as you can see, we have notebook by the seller of Matt. Now we can do that for everything. So number 1, it'll give us our item 1 from the seller of Bob. Number 2 is going to give us item 2. Now let's check what happens if we give an ID that doesn't exist. So let's say ID of 1000. Now we're going to send this, and as you can see, we get our error message of no item with that ID exists. So everything is working perfectly. So let's just get a working one up. So now that our GET request is working, let's move on to our PUT request. So stop the server. So let's define PUT self and selector. Now we'll just say data equals request dot get JSON, just like we did for our post request up here. And so now our item is going to equal our same. So we're just gonna select that certain item based off of its ID. And so now we're gonna explicitly check whether the item exists or not. So if item equals none. So if the item doesn't exist, it's gonna give none. So if it equals none, then we'll return our error code up here. and then elif item. Then we'll just say that our item dot name equals data name. Then our item dot price equals data price, and our item dot seller equals data seller. Now, so over here you can be really flexible by what you want people to be able to edit. So for example, you can make it so once you post it, you can never change the seller, because why would the seller change? So for example, if you want to do that, then you can just exit this, and users won't be able to edit the seller. Or if you want to say you can't edit the name of a product once you originally post it, then you just have to delete this line of code, and then people won't be able to edit that aspect. So for now, I'm just gonna leave all three up here, so all three will be like editable. Now our final thing to do is add it into our database. So db.session.add our item, and then we're gonna commit. And then finally, we'll just return success item successfully edited. Great. So let's run the server. Okay. So now let's, for example, get item 3. Right? So this is notebook from the seller Matt. Now in our put item, so I just have notebook and Matt and everything put in. It's a put request for our ID of 3. Now I'm just going to change it to edited notebook, and then maybe Matthew instead of Matt. And I can maybe change the price to 100 instead of 80. Now let's send this request and see what we get. Success, item successfully edited. Now we can go back to our get item and send, and as you can see, it's edited. And we can also go to our general get items and get all the items, and as you can see, our item with the ID of 3 is successfully edited. Now the last thing that we are going to do is our delete. So let's get into that. So let's stop our server. So let's define delete. And so not resource, it's self and selector. So inside of this, we'll just say our item equals our query result. And so if item, then we can do db.session.delete item, then db.session.commit, and then we can just return successfully deleted item. Then we can do else, we'll return our error. So now let's save this and run it. Okay, so I'm just gonna make like over here I have our items. So let's try deleting item number 3. So in our delete item, let's select number 3 and send a request. Now as you can see, it says successfully deleted item. Now let's try and get item 3, and as you can see, we get a 404 error because no item with that ID exists. And this can be more clearly shown if we get all our items. So as you can see, it just disappears from our list. Now if we try doing this request again, because there is no ID with 3, it's not going to work. So let's send a request. As you can see, it gives us a 404 error as we expected. So that's it for today, guys. So in this video, we successfully added a get request, a put request, and a delete request for specific items in our database.